Welcome to Navigating Tariffs and Global Trade Shifts, a webcast by Practical Ecommerce. The sponsor for this webcast is Passport, a leading internationalization partner for e-commerce brands. Passport's expertise in global logistics, compliance, and localization empowers businesses to scale with confidence in over 180 countries. Our presenter is Thomas Taggart, Passport's Vice President of Global Trade and a cross-border e-commerce leader. For 20 years, he has helped brands go global by simplifying international trade, tax, and product compliance issues. Here's Thomas.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate the invitation to talk about tariffs and what's changed in the trade community. So we talked to a lot of e-commerce leaders, 100 in particular, and got their thoughts on where things are heading and how this impacts their business. And 80% are very concerned about tariffs and regulatory changes. So we do want to share some updates there and how this does impact e-commerce brands. Just a few weeks ago on May 2nd, the administration removed de minimis for products that are made in China and Hong Kong. And as we see from the guidance, and we expect that the de minimis will eventually go away from products of any origin once the systems are in place to process low-value shipments and collect tariffs on those shipments. So here's where things stand. We did have a big reduction in tariffs on products from China and Hong Kong from 145% total to 30%. That 30% is still on top of any existing tariffs, like the 301 tariffs that went into place in 2018, or standard duties for that particular product. So it can still be a sizable impact from brands when their products are made in China or Hong Kong. Total tariffs can easily exceed 100%. We see that in Canada, they still have a 25% surtax, which is really just a duty on certain US made products. And everything else seems to be in a holding pattern, right? The EU has put forward a proposal for reciprocal tariffs. It's not finalized. It's still going through a public comment period. And then we have the 10% base tariffs on every country. And the question is what happens with those reciprocal tariffs that were implemented on Liberation Day, April 2nd, and then put on a 90-day pause while the administration works through trade deals with each country individually. Despite all this uncertainty, e-commerce brands are still very much focused on international sales, as it is still very much an area for profitable growth. And we see that 91% of e-commerce leaders that we talk to are interested in expanding their international sales and see this as still a profitable revenue stream for them. And interestingly, 94% talked about in-country enablement and in-country fulfillment, moving products to key markets like Canada, the UK, Western Europe, Australia, holding goods locally and then fulfilling them domestically. And as well, we saw that 86% plan to increase their cross-border shipments, direct-to-consumer shipments to other countries. And it's a great way for merchants to test the market and demand for their products before making that commitment of moving inventory to each of these markets. So you probably received a lot of guidance and advice on what you can do to adjust to tariffs and what options are on the table. They range from very simple to very complex, and starting with the more complex of those, revisiting your supply chain end to end. It certainly takes a lot to change suppliers, even more to change suppliers in a different country. Now's the time to do it because this impact of tariffs and regulatory changes is not going away. This really started in 2018 when the 301 tariffs first went into place and brands started exploring other markets and other origins like Vietnam and Indonesia as alternatives to China, since the 301 tariffs were a specific impact to products that were made in China. We do see that continuing. We're only a few months into this administration, and there have been more changes in the past 2 months than we've seen in the past 20 years. So we don't expect that to lighten up. I think this will be a time of uncertainty, and there's really no putting this off. And now is the time to revisit your supply chain end to end, to look at ways to move to other countries, uh, possibly moving inshoring and moving manufacturing closer to your markets, and also exploring other things, as we mentioned, in-country fulfillment. And we'll get into that in a bit in more detail. But on the simpler side of things, we have small steps like just ensuring that the harmonized system codes, the commodity codes, the HS codes are accurate. When's the last time you did a proper evaluation to make sure that not only the HS code that you're using is compliant, but that it's the most optimal? There may be several codes that can fit your particular product, and the duty rates between those can vary greatly, especially in commodities like apparel and footwear, where the range of different commodity codes is very specific, and the tariffs assigned to each of those codes can really vary widely. The main thing we saw from merchants and talking to them is that there's a concern about expanding internationally in a profitable way. And that is certainly something to be aware of, because it's not enough to just offer your products for sale in other markets. You want to make sure you're doing so in a way that's consistent, so that you can ensure that you can sell profitably. It's If you're not sure exactly what your total landed cost is going to be for each shipment, you may make money on one product and then lose it on another, or make money on one shipment and bundle of shipments, but lose it on another. So having that guidance to ensure that every sale internationally is profitable is really key. And that's where Passport can come in and offer that end-to-end compliance, starting with the proper optimal classification of the products and surfacing the total landed cost at checkout, so the consumer knows exactly what they are paying, and that it is a guaranteed cost. They're not going to pay anything more when shipping DDP than what they paid at checkout. So that's very important, not only for the consumer and the consumer experience, but for e-commerce merchants to ensure that their margins are in place and they are consistent. The other thing is selling more, making sure that your experience in each market is optimized, that you are localized for each of these markets. You're selling a local currency. If the consumer expects duties and taxes to be included in the product price, then you're taking advantage of that and presenting it in a way that impacts conversion and drives conversion, because it's a lot easier to keep a customer than it is to find a new customer. Lastly, you can put all this together by piecing carriers and the upfront piece of duty and tax, and landed cost calculation and cart, and then returns and remittance, and figuring out where you owe duties and taxes and where you may have to register for a tax ID. Or you can go with a single solution that does all that for you and takes all the heavy lifting off your plate. And that's where Passport comes in as well. And as a single point of contact and a one-stop shop for merchants to expand globally, by taking all that, all those various functions, and putting them to a single solution, so that there's really very little for a merchant to do. You don't have to be an expert in each of these markets. You don't have to be a customs and trade compliance expert. You don't have to be an international tax or indirect tax expert. All that can be outsourced, and there's really nothing for you to worry about other than driving your business and doing what you do best. So let's look at how we do that, especially on the trade compliance side. We look at this in three ways. There's the customs and trade compliance of understanding the import regulations in each country. We talked about the importance of the commodity classification, proper surfacing the properties and taxes in cart, but also total landed costs, ensuring that your total landed cost is accurate, and that if you are working duties and taxes into the product price, that you're doing so in a way that is going to account for variations, like whether a product is over or under de minimis, and what the impact is going to be across different cart options, and that what you're presenting to a consumer drives conversion, but also allows you to sell internationally in a way that's very predictable. You know what your margin is going to be, and you know that it is going to be a profitable sale. On the product side, especially for brands that have uh, more regulated products like cosmetics, health and beauty, nutritional supplements and vitamins, understanding which of those ingredients and chemicals may be restricted or prohibited in a market is critical, so that you know that up front, and that you're able to select the proper countries to focus on and to market in and to sell to, without any unexpected surprises when the shipment gets to the border and has to clear customs. So doing that upfront work to ensure that your products can be sold in that market, and that they will be compliant with local market regulations is very important. For merchants that have consumer electronics or goods that may contain a lithium ion battery, those are regulated as dangerous goods. What quantity can you ship, and how can you ship those products? Also, on the cosmetic side and the health and beauty, perfume, another very regulated dangerous goods because of the flammability. What quantities can you ship, and what's that process look like to ship those perfumes and flammable goods to other markets? And then on the fiscal and tax side, this has really taken off in the past 3 or 4 years, where more markets are demanding that merchants register for a local tax ID and account for the taxes outside of the import process. Now, in almost every country in the world, duties and taxes are paid on import as part of that import process, and that's handled by the carrier, the customs broker. There's nothing more for the brand to do. But in markets like the UK, Europe, it's mandatory for a merchant to account for those low value goods, the tax on the low value goods called value added tax, VAT. And in other markets like Australia and Singapore, there's a goods and services tax where if you cross a certain threshold and you're selling more than a certain amount, you need to go and register for a local tax ID. And now that can be outsourced in a couple ways. The way we do it is through seller of record, where Passport takes on that responsibility for surfacing the total taxes that are owed, the indirect taxes, and collecting those in cart and remitting them on your behalf. So you don't have to go out and get 6, 7, 8 different tax IDs and then manage the monthly or quarterly filings in each of these markets and being exposed to the tax authority through seller of record. Passport manages that process end to end, and takes on that responsibility of dealing with the tax agencies in each of those regions. It's similar to merchant of record, but the benefit is that you don't have to send your payment to a third party and then wait to get that money back. Through seller of record, the processing and the payment still goes directly to you as the brand. Merchant of record is a model that really came about at the beginning of e-commerce, when brands had a very hard time getting a payment gateway, essentially the ability to accept a credit card payment. But this was 1995, not 2025. In 2025, payment processing is standard. Through Shopify, it's native functionality. Through nearly every platform, it's native functionality. There's really no reason to pay a third party to process a credit card or an alternative payment method like Apple Pay. That's just giving up margin and revenue when it's native functionality and included in many service offerings. Compliance wise, it's the same process in either merchant of record or seller of record. That MOR, the SOR, takes on that responsibility and becomes the party responsible for the collection and remittance and filing and reporting of those taxes. It really comes down to how the payment is processed and when you get your money. All right. Now, looking at how Passport views internationalization, it's one of two ways. You can start with direct to consumer and ship cross-border, what we call cross-border management. We enable that in over 180 markets, where you can ship directly to consumers. We manage that process end to end. If you find that it makes sense for you to move inventory to key markets, then we support that as well. we can help you move inventory to destinations like Canada, UK, EU, Australia, and hold inventory there with a partner 3PL, or you can bring your own 3PL. And we can act as the importer of record if you have no physical presence or permanent establishment in that destination country. We can manage the import process and the payment of duties and taxes, the uplift of getting your inventory from origin to that destination. And as goods are sold, also accounting for the taxes that are paid and reconciling the difference between the tax that was paid on import and the tax that would be owed on the final sale. So a lot of advantages to in-country enablement, especially now with tariffs the way they are. It's a way to bypass the US tariffs and send your goods directly from the manufacturer or the supplier to that destination country and only pay the duties that would be owed at the tariff rate of that destination country. And I think what you'll find is that these other countries do not have the same retaliatory tariffs or reciprocal tariffs that the US has implemented this year. So in-country enablement is really more than just minimizing that exposure to tariffs, but it is one of the key benefits. Instead of paying tariffs on the retail value that your consumer paid at checkout, you're able to essentially claim the declared value of the shipment is the value that you paid your manufacturer or your supplier for those goods. And that is obviously much less than the retail price paid. So it's a way to instantly and compliantly reduce the impact of tariffs. This is something that has been tried and litigated and demonstrated as a compliant model. The valuation method is accepted and approved. There's really no question about the liability here or whether this is a model that is compliant. We know that it is, and we know that it works for many merchants who have moved their inventory to these key markets to fulfill locally. It also has other benefits like reducing the payment processing fee. Instead of paying these conversion fees, then you can reduce that by going through a local payment processor, reducing that up to 2%. And that can be very significant. Well, that's 2% of the GMV. And then you have other benefits like domestic shipping. Obviously, if you're shipping locally to the consumer, that final mile, which is usually the biggest portion of the overall cost, is reduced because you're using a number of local final mile providers that can fulfill the product and deliver it to your consumer's doorstep at a more cost affordable way. And not to mention, the goods have already cleared customs, so there's no question about whether there's going to be a hang up or a hold at customs, and your customer is going to be waiting for those goods to clear customs before they receive it. It's already cleared customs. It's sitting in the 3PL in the destination country, and it's ready to go out with a local final mile carrier for delivery. And that certainly drives a better customer experience. And we talked about the importance of keeping your existing customers that you've worked very hard to obtain and to provide an experience for them that is much more favorable. And the last thing here is if you are in a space, if your commodities are footwear or apparel that may have a high returns rate, fashion accessories, then having a local fulfillment option gives you a local returns option, which is a much better experience than a cross-border returns option. It's much more affordable. You can bring those products back in and restock them and resell them without having to re-export them back to the origin. And it allows you to get them back on the shelves and keep that inventory, reduce your holding costs and inventory carrying costs, and recycle that inventory through the process and get it back to your consumers in a cost-efficient way. But the big thing here is just reducing the cost of returns. Returns can be very unprofitable for brands, and maintaining that inventory in country is a great way to reduce the returns exposure. Okay, so let's look at cross-border and what it takes here to reach customers. We see that many customers, when they're shipping cross-border, they're concerned with the transit times, the lack of visibility, the high cost of international shipping, and then whether they're going to owe duties and taxes when the carrier shows up at their door, or whether that's all handled. And with Passport, all of that is addressed. It's all an internal network. It's a closed loop. It's our proprietary network. We're managing the surfacing the duties and taxes at checkout, the end-to-end logistics, customs clearance. If there's an issue, if customs wants another document, we're able to provide that to keep the shipment moving. Tracking and visibility, you have a branded tracking page so that your customer can see exactly where the shipment is in the process. But it also gives you the ability to upsell, to offer other products at that at that tracking page and display other items and encourage upselling and cross-selling. Okay. A lot of changes, of course, in the tariff world, and we're staying on top of this through Trump Trade Tracker. We set up this site so that we could provide the most relevant information to brands so that they can stay on top of it. We sift through all the various news articles and pull out the ones that are accurate and most impactful and share them here, as well as tweets and posts and to keep you informed of the latest. But most importantly, there's a simple breakdown of where tariffs stand. And it's a great resource to know exactly where things are with tariffs, regardless of the origin of your product or where you're shipping it to. So I encourage you to check that out and let us know your thoughts and get in touch if we can help you expand your international um, experience. Okay, so lots of changes in the trade world. You don't have to be a compliance expert. You don't have to be a trade expert. You can rely on a provider like Passport, not only for the end-to-end logistics, but to ensure that your products will be compliant and that you are on top of the latest changes and staying ahead of that and able to adjust to find the solution that works best for your brand, whether that is shipping cross-border and direct to consumer or moving inventory and holding it locally through in-country enablement.
Thank you to Passport and Thomas for the presentation. For more on Passport's cross-border solutions and expertise, visit passportglobal.com. For the latest tariff and trade developments, see trumptradetracker.com. To download Passport's Going Global Smarter study, see passportglobal.com/scaling internationally.